Welcome to a new video series on the long-term ownership of this 2024 Honda Pilot. And I've been in the three-row game now for probably about 3 or 4 years because I'm using it as a work vehicle, a hauler for a trip machine, and all the money in the industry is going towards SUVs and three-row SUVs. It's really popular, so they've gotten better and better. The competition is a lot higher as well. One of the reasons why I wanted to do this series was to be a bit more real. If you look on the internet, YouTube videos between the influencers and the marketing, you'd think everybody is just loaded full of money and having a ye good old time. And it makes you kind of feel bad if you're not in that position and you have a family or you're struggling and you need like a good product, but you don't have a cajillion dollars. So I'm going to start this off by posing a very basic question. I want you to look at both of these and honestly think to yourself, which would you rather be driving? And I think the thing is 9 out of 10 times people would answer they'd rather drive the BMW. And I'm not going to lie, it's one of the best driving SUVs or three-row SUVs on the planet with a V8, the ride quality, all the features. But there's a big difference between wanting to drive it and actually owning it. Now, granted, I did not buy this new. I bought it used during the end of COVID, so I did pay a little bit more than I should have. But this represents one of the biggest mistakes I ever made buying a vehicle, ever. And I just want to let this sink in for a minute. In 2020, this was brand new at $122,000. In 2023, I just got a trade-in quote, 2 different trade-in quotes for $48,000. That's almost a $70,000 depreciation. So it just goes to show, despite all the technology, how great it is to drive, this is literally becoming a paperweight. Nobody wants it as a used product because it is so overtly complicated and expensive to repair. And now that I've got time in something like this, it really opens your eyes in the regard of, is this really worth it? Are these luxury products, these lease-only machines, worth that extra money? And I'm just going to tell you, I don't think they are. Because after all of that wears off, you're left with a whole bunch of compromise to have a luxury vehicle. From, I got to spend $500 for a caliper if the brakes go bad and I got to go to a dealership, versus going to an AutoZone or a parts store to get basic brake pads for $50. I mean, literally, it's night and day. But you're achieving the same end game between these two, and in a lot of cases, a vehicle like the Pilot does the everyday functions much better. It's less complicated. They've kept the simple things simple that need to be that way, versus trying to wow you with every electronic nanny and everything that this thing has. And a lot of vehicles are leaning towards. So I'm going to get in this. And granted, this is brand new, so it's going to be an overview of what I think is good, at least at the start of this series, and then some of the things I don't like to start off, and then I'm going to take it for a brief drive. Now, it's no surprise if you've followed our content, this is one of our favorite three-row SUVs of the year. And it makes a lot of sense that I do a video series on something I like. I'm going to be far more engaged, and I'm going to be far more realistic as the ownership period goes on. In terms of interior and exterior, this has been redone for this model here. It is essentially shared on the same platform that the MDX is on. Now, the suspension has changed. They don't have as many luxury features, but a lot of the same good things about the MDX are there, but it's just been more Honda-fied, which means it's more utilitarian. It's trying to wow you less with material choices, fancy pants exterior design, and it's just a more appliance-looking vehicle overall. Now, they've moved to a more boxy look, like many brands are doing with their SUVs, to kind of merge it with the times. It's far more butch-looking, and I think it's a little bit less descript, but more nondescript. And one of the reasons why I chose red is because every vehicle is white, silver, or black. So at least in a parking lot filled with SUVs, at least, oh, there's a red SUV, I'm going to find it. I think it adds a little bit of personality to it as well. But on the inside, a lot of that ends. This is a very monochromatic interior space, and I will say that they've backed off all the shiny material. There is some high contrast stuff on the doors, but they've mixed kind of the bright works in terms of matte silver in it, so it doesn't look as, well, ultra shiny and fingerprint prone. They have left some of the piano black in, around the steering wheel, the center console area, and where the HVAC controls are, but it's not out of control and it's really subtle. Everything else has been left to matte textures and hard textures, and then you get to the leather seating surfaces on the upper trim, and they are really well done. Like the piping, the silver piping is a good accent, but I'm gonna be straight. It's a very plain Jane type interior without being overly generic. And the main point is like every vehicle you're using every day, you're putting people in, you have to haul stuff, you're like living in this thing as like a secondary house. The fancy stuff wears off. What you really care about is how is it to interact with, and that's where the highlight of this vehicle is. And I complain about this all the time. How hard is it to design a door panel where you can fit multiple tiers of storage, like real bottles, multiple bottles, multiple storage things like hand sanitizer, food, a snack, your phone, a wallet, maybe miscellaneous stuff for personal items. You can pretty much fit everything you want in just one single door. And then the passenger has their own space. So you're not eating into the communal space in this car, and it's still very tactile to use. You have a physical door handle, you have a physical grab handle to open and close the door, all the things that our human hands need to interact with to make this a less frustrating experience is what Honda does really well here. And that really transfers over to the entire cabin space, from steering wheel heater on the steering wheel, like logical placement, clicky controls. Like you're never going to figure out, oh, where's the volume switch? It's like right here, it's clicky. You know when you interact with stuff. And the same thing goes with HVAC controls. And I joke around a lot about, you see many cars moving to HVAC into the touchscreen. Well, if you're getting yelled at by 3 different people in the car and you're overwhelmed with life and somebody's in the back complaining they don't know how to adjust the temperature, it's literally, it's physical. Like I just turn a knob, I hit rear and I turn a knob, that's it. I don't have to interact with the screen. So a lot of this, again, is about the thought to interior space, usability, where to put things, and the abundance of space. You haven't been shortcut. And we look at a vehicle like the CX-90 and just like the Cayenne we just got out of, because they have to be rear-wheel drive to be great driving cars, you have a transmission tunnel or a differential tunnel that eats up all your center console space. That's not the problem with something like the Pilot. You open up the center console and you're going to fit a purse in there. You're going to fit a large amount of bottles. If you have kids, you can fit a lot of things in there. And these little things start to add up into your daily usability, where it becomes far less frustrating to use, and it just becomes part of making your life a little bit easier. And that's what the Pilot does really well. Despite it doesn't have a massive wow factor, it does these things good. The big update here to pretty much all this generation of Honda products is the new seat design. The skeleton of the seat has been improved, and the foams. So this is a far less stiff and rigid seat than it used to be on the older products. So even sitting in it for hours is way better. You don't have the pressure points as much on your back and your butt. And I think it's going to be more adept at supporting multiple body types as well. If you're small, you can still get up on the steering wheel within reason, so you don't kill yourself with an airbag. But even if you're big, you still have plenty of space. And the rear seats and the way that the cargo space works in the back, including removing the second row armrest to give you more space to walk through, all of this is very easy to use and physical while still being comfortable. The one thing I will say is the removal of the center armrest or seat, while it does have a stowing place in the hatch under the floor, which is great, it leaves these massive anchors where the seat went, these massive steel pieces that 10 to 1 a kid's gonna fall, or somebody's gonna fall and break their leg or hit their head on it. So I wish they had like a trim piece that you could put over it, like for storage, that you could still give you the pass durability but covers up those anchor points so they're less of a liability. But other than that, really everything about the interior space and the functionality of this is why we love it so much. And including the audio system, the electronics work pretty well. You can see there's a placeholder here in the infotainment. The bezel is clearly designed for the new updated infotainment that they're putting in the Accords. So unfortunately, the 2024 does not have that, but you can see that it will get it probably in a mid-cycle refresh. The infotainment has been improved slightly over like the Civic. It is quicker to connect. It seems less crash prone with whatever updates they made. So even that, Android Auto and Apple CarPlay wireless work pretty seamlessly in here, which is what you're going to rely on in infotainment like this. So basically most of that works pretty well. And in future videos, I'm going to get into the safety suite, some of the safety and functionality parts of how well they work and don't work, and then including what's been going on with adding some miles. But I'm going to put this on the road with Jack really quick and give you a quick story.
Long-term Honda Pilot, Mark.
Jack, let me tell you a little story, my friend.
I can't wait.
So you're 25, and clearly this isn't going to apply to everybody, but you're 25 years old and you made the decision that you're going to have a relationship with a female. And You go out for dinner, you go to see some movies, you talk about science, philosophy, your life, your dreams. You even take vacations to places you normally wouldn't that you hate, but you just enjoy each other's company. And guess what happens? 10 years passes and now you're 35. You're at dinner at a restaurant you used to love, but now you hate. Every single word you say goes in one ear and out the other, and you start spinning up a conversation about the 28 different trim levels of 911 you're considering buying and how you're on the fence.
This applies to me, I see that. All right, yeah.
So you're thinking about spending about 20 grand on the leather dash upgrade, and you made one fatal mistake. You're no longer in charge of this conversation. The uterus is. The uterus is now in charge of your entire life. And you, at that very moment, you black out and you wake up in the hospital to twins being delivered. And she's screaming at you, "Did you get the car seats ready?" And you go outside and you put your rear-facing car seats in your GR Corolla, and you try to fit your diaper bag and your stroller and your formula bottles and your bottle warmer and your sterilizer and your wipes and every other little thing. And you get up to the front with the car seats, and you realize your knees are in the f***ing dashboard. There's no room. There's no room for your lattes. There's no room for anything. And you look in your little center console and you're like, oh my God, I can barely fit my wallet and an iPhone cable in here, Mark. What am I gonna do with my life? Well, you get home, and after about 2 months of no sleep and 2 screaming kids, you get in and your wife's like, hey, or your fiance in this case, she's like, hey, did you walk Wolfie? He hasn't been walked in 8 hours. You're like, all right, I'll go walk him. And you get outside and you forget it's 20 below zero. And the dog doesn't want to take a shit. So you walk outside for hours with this dog for him to take a dump. You get back inside and guess what? There's 2 full diapers waiting for you to change. And the kids are sick. And your wife tells you, you don't spend enough time with me and the kids, Billy. What are we gonna do? This isn't working for me. Billy at work listens to me. He spends all the time in the world with me. He talked to me at the right place and the right time. And you don't treat me like how you used to. And you go back up in your office and you realize she's moving out the next day. What are you gonna do? You're stuck with the Honda Pilot. And when you go into your next corporate job and your boss hates you, he's gonna say, you know what? He doesn't drive a sports car. And your coworkers don't hate you because you drive a more expensive car. You drove a Honda Pilot. And you decide you're gonna keep this long term for 30 years because you can't afford to keep anything else. And it's still gonna run, it's still gonna be comfortable, and it's still gonna work every day of your life, your miserable fucking life. And now it's you and your Pilot for the long haul when everybody else has left you.
Well, Mark, I can't wait to revisit this Honda Pilot with you once you get some more miles and we get to see where your story now takes us.
I'm gonna take it right on the back of this thing. I know that was a bit unhinged, but I think the roundabout point is that Honda has found a way to show you that we have not evolved all that much as humanity physically, and technology is moving much faster in the car market than we are as people. And I'm not saying this to be like, oh, get with the times or whatever, but we still have the same physical constraints of having hands that we need to use. We still have to drive cars with hands on the wheel. So trying to overcomplicate some of these basic systems that are just tried and true, like Honda proves it here, having door handles that are real, that you can grab onto, the tactileness, the physicality of everything without having to overthink every single input is why this car really works great. And the argument of like, well, is a luxury car better? It really doesn't do anything better. Yes, it delivers better drivetrains. You can have 500 horsepower plus, you can have crazy differentials and rear wheel drive, and you can do a little bit of skids, but nobody's doing that here. So the things that a vehicle like this is supposed to do is essentially, you're trying to turn this into a minivan without being a minivan, and it does most of the minivan things great. It's comfortable, it rides quiet, the handling is really great with the differential. They've made it really nimble without feeling like it's just a total boat. It's split the difference between almost every single brand at doing the ride quality thing, the drivability great. The only thing that it really is not the best at is fuel economy. Despite it having a really smooth V6, naturally aspirated, no turbos, you're still gonna be stuck in the lower 20s. And to be fair, most of the bigger vehicles like this are doing the same thing. The other negative really here is most people are going to look at this and they're going to feel kind of their stomach drop. It's a little soulless, and it's a little NPC, and I know in this segment of vehicle that you may not be looking for a ton of passion and design and like just a wow factor, so that might drag this down for some people. Might be willing to spend more for a luxury product just to get a little bit more personality, but I think after that wears off, you really love driving this thing, and that's really what I appreciate the most. And I'll be curious to see over time, as we pile on miles with this and the honeymoon phase wears off, if my opinion will change. So stick with us as we go through that journey.